Hello and good evening. Oh, I'm starting that way. Hello and good evening. So we'll just wait for people to come on. Hopefully, again, we're on the right channel. Bit confusing this stuff, isn't it? Anyway, tonight we thought we'd talk about doing a wrong right, and we think that's quite an important thing, don't we? You get a lot of people, and we'll explain as we go through what that is. Or people are appearing, so there must be like that. Because a lot of people say, "Oh, my pupil." I tell my pupils all the time, if you get in the wrong lane on test, just go in the wrong lane, and they redirect you back, and that's correct, of course, isn't it? But we have a bit of a more of a take on that, really, don't we?
Yep. So just for you guys that are joining, this evening's live chat is called Doing Wrong Right. So as Blaine kind of referred to there about what we mean by doing wrong right, I'm pretty certain that all of us say again and again to our pupils, don't we, that if you find yourself in the wrong lane or something like that, then do wrong right, do what you're meant to do in that lane. I guess our take on it is that not many instructors follow that through with actually practicing doing wrong right. So very, very deliberately getting pupils into the wrong lane. Now you kind of said this the other day, didn't you, that actually if you're not getting pupils into the wrong lane and getting them wrong and letting them learn how to rescue themselves from mistakes, they then don't do that. You know that the majority of your pupils find themselves somewhere they shouldn't be on test, and the thing that fails them is not that they're in the wrong lane, but the lack of mirrors, the split-second decision making, that kind of stuff. The reason being is they haven't practiced that Blue Peter moment. They haven't got that moment, have they, where they know exactly what to do. And despite all that theory, despite you saying just do it, just do it, just do it, if they've not practiced it, they don't do it. It's not something they do naturally.
You wouldn't for a second think of just giving the theory behind a manoeuvre and not practicing it. You wouldn't give the theory of that 5-lane roundabout and not practice it. It's exactly the same thing. So just because you tell them doesn't mean it's going to happen. It's a conscious, subconscious thing in the brain. So it has to be a subconscious motion, because normally, I'll need to say something else then, but they panic when they suddenly find they're in the wrong lane. Unless Lou says you practice it a few times, it becomes a conscious motion, which is 20 times slower than a subconscious motion. And therefore they tend to then cut someone up or not check properly and panic and rush and all those types of things. So it is, tonight's might be quite short, because really the thing we want to talk about is go and practice those things. We can give you some examples for sure, but practice getting them in the wrong lane. So you can literally say to them, you know, we're going to go straight on the roundabout, but we're deliberately going to get in the wrong lane. We're going to get in the left lane, let's say, if it's left only, and then talk them through it like you would if you were doing anything else. And then you can later on to be a little bit harsher with it, I suppose, but obviously making sure this is safe, of changing your mind halfway through. So you can say, we're going to follow the road ahead, and as you come up to the roundabout, you can say, oh, we're going to go right now, and see what they do. But obviously you'll clear this with them first. They know this is happening, they know it's part of the training, otherwise it could be quite dodgy. So it has to be structured in the right way, but you want to sort of replicate that bit of panic, that bit of rushing, don't you? That adrenaline rush they get when they make those mistakes. You need to sort of bring that up. The other thing I tend to do, and I do it to Lou's pupils quite a lot, and Lou deliberately doesn't take them to these places, I will keep 2 or 3 dodgy roundabouts, dodgy road markings. We've all got them, and where the sign is, you know, there's no sign for left only, and right at the very end by the roundabout is a left only arrow on the road. The van in front's been blocking, and now they want to go straight on their left only lane. I keep those to myself. Not all of them, of course, because you're doing training, but 1 or 2 I'll keep to myself. So when I do mock tests, I'm going to go that way, they're going to end up in the wrong lane more than likely, and then I can see how they react. So I put that in part of my mock test, part of my training, to see how they're going to react, and we've done all the training up to that point, and then we can evaluate it and redo it and do it more if we need to, or praise if they get it right. So to test it as well, not just practice it, but actually test it. So you probably can think of 1 or 2 areas you probably practice to death, and then when they do it on test, they get in the wrong lane anyway. Think, what's going on there? So don't practice it to death. Practice it to see if they've got the theory of what they do when they get in the wrong lane.
Practice the skills of getting it wrong, basically.
Absolutely.
One of the other ways that I quite often do that is, particularly on roundabouts, I might very deliberately ask them to turn right at a roundabout, and just at the point where they're going to do middle mirror, left mirror, pop a left signal on and move across, we will have talked about what are you going to do if. What if you can't move across? What if you check that mirror and there's somebody there? What if you're aware that that motorbike has disappeared out of your view and you're thinking, well, where is he? Something like that. Might have talked about it, but never actually practiced it. So they'll get to a point where obviously my job is to keep it safe, so I'm not going to do this if their actions or reactions are going to be potentially dangerous. I'm going to be ultra aware of that. But I'll get them to the point where they're hugging that roundabout, they're doing the third exit right, for example, and I say, watch them do a middle mirror and a left mirror. I say, imagine there's a van there, there's a van there, there's a van there, what are you going to do, 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 what are you going to do? And I just say that, just kind of constantly just bombard them with, there's someone there, you can't do it, you can't do it, what are you going to do, what are you going to do? And just watch the reaction, and watch that, either the delay of them thinking about what they're going to do, or they still go and do it, or the complete calmness. And actually this is what I quite often get if I've done it 2 or 3 times, the complete calmness where they do a middle mirror, left mirror check, and I say, there's a van there, what are you going to do, you can't cross, and they just middle mirror, right signal, go round again, and it just happens in that smoothness and with absolutely no panic, despite me being the one that is putting the panic in there. So that's something that I do quite a lot of. And again, as I said, just to reiterate, I wouldn't do that if there was the slightest chance of them acting or reacting in a way that was going to be potentially dangerous.
It's all about them getting used to how they feel when panic sets in and what to do about it. We were cutting some videos the other day, weren't we? And you had that situation with James, wasn't it?
Yeah, it has a really nice.
That was lovely. He's not had that many hours, 8 or 10 maybe at that point.
Yeah.
And he just did it perfectly. He just went all the way around, and it wasn't a problem at all.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys can also think of a roundabout where there's, let's say, 2 lanes turning right, and your pupils always tend to pick the right-hand lane, even though we know left is best. Let them do it, but then practice what they're going to do when they come round the corner and they have got that other vehicle next to them. So, as instructors, we've said about this before in other live chat, but sometimes we help them too much in the respect of, oh no, you need to be in the middle lane here. Well, let them get in the wrong lane, and then work on those strategies of either going round again or coming off into the right-hand lane and then working your way across. Because the things that fail people are people, shooting across and cutting up. And it's, as we said before, it's very easy just to say, stick next to the roundabout, go round and come off again. But actually, unless they practice it, it's not going to be in their subconscious. It's not going to happen, because panic will take over. And when we panic, whatever it may be, the thing that comes out is the stuff that's deep in your subconscious, and therefore that's what it needs to, where it needs to be, really.
I think the other thing that I
Hi,
do.
Jodie, by the way. So don't all say hi back.
The other thing that I do a lot of from a doing wrong right point of view is getting them very, very deliberately wrong on manoeuvres. So I know that you also do this, don't you? Where I'll either reposition the car from the passenger seat. I'll either just get them into a different position, or I'll instruct them into a different position. So I'll say left a bit, left a bit, left a bit, left a bit, stop, sort it out. So I'll very deliberately get them touching a curb, getting them too big an angle on a left corner reverse, something like that, and very deliberately getting them to now do wrong right. Because again, when it comes to something like a manoeuvre, if you are constantly practicing perfection or near perfection, you have all those wonderful tools of how you're going to get it right, and then for some reason something's different. Pressure, absolutely. Either pressure or the corner isn't quite the same angle that they last did, something like that.
Mrs. Smith's at a garden gate watching them and all that type of stuff. It was cat normally. It's always a cat.
There's always a cat, isn't there? Yeah, absolutely.
Watch out for that one tomorrow, guys. Watch out for the cat watching you do manoeuvres. I'm sure as driving instructors we come back as cats. Sitting there going, oh, I wouldn't have taught it like that in my day.
So very, very deliberately getting them wrong and getting them to practice doing wrong right. So again, it's one of those things that we might talk about. This is if you get too close, if you get too far away, do this, do that. But actually doing wrong right.
I think my pupils do it as a default because I don't actually teach the manoeuvres as manoeuvres. So it's all about them experimenting with finding out what they do. So if they reverse and they're halfway between the bays or whatever, then they're going to put it right, and they're going to go forward and back or whatever they choose to do. And by doing that, they will always get it right. They may not do it right straight away, but they will always get it right. And it frustrates me a bit that if they make a correction on a test, it has to go down as a driving error. Well, I think if a pupil can correct a parking fault particularly, and then get it right, so maybe touch the curb or get very near the curb, run forward, straight up and come back, that shows a lot more skill. That tight clutch control, that really quick steering, all those things. Also shows that they can park in the high street when they're passed, and not 1.5, 2, 3 car lengths. but they will always be marked down. And that, as I say, to me, is always a bit frustrating, because if they can do that, they can do it. Whereas if they do a lovely in one movement parallel part, that could be the first time they've actually pulled that off. It could be a fluke, and they never ever do it again. And there's some videos on YouTube, isn't there? Of, I think it's a person taking 15 minutes to park, and they just keep doing the same thing. They keep, locking at the same time, straight at the same time, ending up in the same place, and never actually getting into space, because they don't know how to put it right if it's going wrong. So with manoeuvres, say particularly, my pupils won't have a method. They will just do it. If that doesn't work, then they'll put it right, and therefore they're always putting it right. And I learned my lesson on that when I was quite new to instruction. I had a professional footballer play for Bournemouth at the time, and he'd done all his manoeuvres perfectly, so we practiced them all 2 or 3 times, all spot on, brilliant, thought this is great. Went up for a test, mucked up the reverse corner for whatever reason, I can't remember, couldn't put it right, had not a clue what to do, failed on that. And I've always learned from that is putting it right rather than getting it right, I think is more important. So what's anything happening here?
I think Rich has just said about they do get themselves wrong, don't they? They're very good at getting themselves wrong. And then Rich, you said that then I talk about how to fix it. This is the problem, it's you talking about how to fix it. So just be a little bit aware that if it's you offering the solutions rather than them finding the solutions, it's not as powerful. So actually getting them to do the fixie bit rather than you talking about the fixie bit. That's just a little, it might be your choice of words, Rich, but it's certainly a really subtle yet massively powerful difference, if you see what I mean.
Because if they can work out ways of working out how to put it right, they will always be able to do that.
Yeah.
It may be different every time, but you can, if you've got that brain where you can start to think things and come up with solutions, you're able to do that.
Yeah.
And that's really important for anyone in life. If you can come up with solutions, because life's about solutions 5 times an hour, isn't it? So it's about solutions, coming up with solutions, and if they're told what to do, they won't be able to come up with their own. So you could tell them 15 solutions, but on test they might need number 16 because the situation is slightly different for whatever reason. So yeah, get them to come up with the solutions. Obviously you're there for safety and all those types of things, like we said, but it's really sort of powerful how they surprise us, don't they, with the solutions they come up with. I've never thought about that before. Give it a go, see what happens. And you're there just to make sure it's safe. Doesn't matter if you've not seen it before. Doesn't matter if it doesn't tick certain boxes. As long as the outcome is what they need and what you require.
I'm just sitting here trying to think of other situations where I might be getting them to practice doing wrong right. And actually, one of the ones that I do, I don't know about you guys, but that drive before test. One of the big things I do is get them to stall, and get them to stall again and again and again, because quite possibly they have done 20 hours and not stalled. And then, of course, what happens is they get on test and they're not stalled for weeks, and they have that brain fart moment. They have that, oh my God, I haven't done this. So that whole get the stalls out of the way, make them deliberately stall, clutch down, engine on, go, clutch down, engine on, go. So when they're first at the traffic lights, and it happens because of test pressure, they've practiced that Blue Peter moment, and it's there, fresh in their heads. The other one I do just before test is I get them pulling off in 2nd gear, and I even get them pulling off in 3rd gear, because what I want them to do is re-engage the brain about what that feels like when you've gone and got yourself in a different gear. So pull off not feeling right, either you're in a car with a bit more gas and a really subtle clutch and the car will go, or of course 3rd gear where actually you're going to rescue yourself before you go and stall and recognise it. So those are the other 2 things that I do about just literally before test and doing wrong right.
And I think that's quite powerful. I certainly remember of people that stalled a roundabout. It was 8:40 in the morning test, stalled at the first roundabout, big old roundabout in Portsmouth, stalled, went handbrake, neutral, clutch down, 1st gear, biting point, handbrake down, missed an opportunity, failed for that, because his mum had told him as he come out the door, ignore what your instructor says and you must go handbrake neutral when you stall. I think that's important, because if you were to do the practice ones, that would come up. Just cancel, because you just about
I don't know why it does, sorry.
It doesn't, unfortunately. So if I'd done that, I would have found that out, that his mum had told him that, and I would have been able to put him right, of course. So do you want to read that out?
I can't quite see. Pete, we're struggling because the whole comment doesn't come up, unfortunately, but it says parking bays. I teach to park in a bay. I never give them a reference point or a line up or anything like that. I just say put the car where you want to put the car, and then you say after a couple of attempts, but I can't see what you do after a couple of attempts. It's not giving us the full lot.
I presume that they get an idea and they do it.
Possibly,
fine,
yeah, possibly.
Or he gives up and goes in Tesco's for a beer.
What I would say there, Pete, is I'm fairly similar now. Of course, there are instructors out there who have these weird and wonderful reference points, and they do these fail-safe ways of getting it to work. Personally, I'm the same, Pete. I say just put the car where you want to put the car, and that seems to work. And they find their own weird and wonderful ways of doing it.
It really works with reversing behind the car. I've done that for the last year or so, and basically done a couple of things. One is to pull them up, cut the car lengths from the car in front, so on the road, and get them to pull out and pull next to it. Say, how was that? Well, it's fine. Just do the same backwards. Invariably they might touch the curb. What are you going to do now then? Oh, I don't know, start again. Why would you start again? And have a conversation, and invariably they decide to swing it in, straighten up and come back, and correction's absolutely fine. So yeah, getting them to experiment with it. As long as it's a controlled environment. I have a little dead end road that I use, which has got a little bit of activity. It's got like a field to the left, so people walking in dogs, there's a bit of observation required. But you don't tend to be bothered too much. We can play with it a little bit. And it's not got a great camera and all that type of stuff, and then they get more confident with it because they know they can put it right rather than do it right. And I think that, as I said before, is really important, because it doesn't matter, they will be marked down for it, but unless you're going for no minor faults all the time, I'm not too worried about that.
The other thing that that I get them practicing is what to say out loud when they've done something wrong, because again I think that they might practice it in theory, in practice, being in a wrong lane or mucking up the manoeuvre or whatever, but they need to verbalise that, and actually you really need to practice the physical, oh dear, got myself in the wrong lane, I'm just going to okay, and they practice that, because inevitably if a pupil says on test, oh dear, I'm in the wrong lane, the examiner's response will either be nothing or do what's safe. And the examiner will say just do what's safe or do what's right. And so actually I get my pupils to complete that sentence. Oh dear, I've got myself in the wrong lane, so I'm going to do what's safe. And almost talk themselves into do it.
Absolutely. It's
so
a triggered
really,
response, isn't it? They must have a triggered response, because that's how we cope as humans. So it's a triggered response which just helps them keep on track, literally.
Just having a little look at Richard's next comment. What about a tip with where to look to find out how to fix it? Like mirrors, then see if they can fix it out on a manoeuvre. Absolutely, Richard. I do various things. I really do think out the box when it comes to things like that. So I don't just use mirrors. They might be one of the things that I'm using. But I'm a great advocate for getting out the car and looking. I think that's great. You know, secure the car, open a door, go and have a look, and particularly if in an area obviously that you're not holding people up, but go and walk around the car and have a little look. That really helps them get a different kind of perspective on something. It also really helps watching somebody else do a manoeuvre. So actually watching somebody else and pointing out all the things that they have done right and all the things that you would do differently. So not necessarily looking at wrong, but looking at things that you do differently.
So you mean a third party and other people doing a move?
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing is demonstration. I think is quite powerful, and also demonstration from them outside the vehicle. They could possibly be staying outside the vehicle while you do the manoeuvre. Necessary. But I think if you let them experiment with it, those things aren't necessarily necessary, because they will find it's about awareness of where the car is within relationship to the white lines or the curb or the other car, and that's just practice. But if you get it wrong and you can put it right, you're not getting it wrong, are you?
Henna says, a lot of mine need reference points to give them something to work with. It's really interesting, Henna, because actually I can't remember the last people I had who needed a reference point. So it may well be, if you look at your teaching, it's you that needs to provide the reference point. Does that make sense? Rather than your people needing the reference point. So just be a little bit aware of that. If you find that a lot of your pupils are needing something, it may well be a result of your teaching preference rather than their learning preference. So just be a little bit aware of that. But also I would say that if you have a pupil who is needing a reference point, the fundamental thing is that it has to be their reference point, not yours. So encouraging them to tell you where they're going to look, what is referencing to something else. So whether it's the back of the car level with the front of that person, whatever it is, but it needs to be their reference point, not yours. Because the problem with you giving them the solution is that it then becomes a memory game. It then becomes something that they have to remember rather than something that they have worked out for themselves. And we know that memory games don't work. They don't get used post-test. and they certainly go out of the brain when the brain is having to work on other things.
I think, I don't use reference points either anymore, and what I tend to do is maybe give them a couple of ideas or rules. So let's go back to the parallel park behind a car. Invariably they're going to, as long as they don't create too much angle, and as long as they don't turn straighten up too early, they're going to be alright, they'll be able to sort it out. So if they haven't got too much angle, but they touch the curb with the rear left wheel, if you've not got too much angle, you've created enough space in front to go forward, straighten up, come out. And I love doing it anyway, because it's really good practice of going slow and staying quick, which is good for turning the road and all those other things. So I'm not going to worry about reference points unless they're creating too much angle constantly, or straightening up too early. So I just say to them, just don't create too much angle, give them an idea of what the angle is, roughly, and don't worry about being too late, because too late is not a problem, too early is a problem. So if you straighten up too early, you can't then swing the front in. So give them a couple of rules like that if they're struggling a bit, and it may sound quite weak, but actually it works really well.
Yeah.
I think work on the angle and work on the distance, and then forget the rest will fit in.
Yeah, absolutely, I would agree. And I think the angle being one of the biggest issues, and I think when it comes to things like that, I don't use wing mirrors or rear mirrors and all that kind of stuff.
A 6-year-old wouldn't have a clue what 1 o'clock was if it hit him on the face, would it, So,
but I use pizza slices.
Yeah.
So
you could even say,
not too much pizza.
Turn to the left, 1, 2, turn to the right. Anything that works for that person. But again, if you can get that person to come up with a solution, then they're going to remember it, because you'd have to remember a solution you come up with because it's in your subconscious brain. It's come out of your brain, so it must be in there, mustn't it?
So Pete says, I feel gut instinct is a good thing. I tell them to go with and see what happens. Sometimes people is afraid to take that step.
Yeah.
Do you know, Pete, this is about responsibility, isn't it? And this is about your level of responsibility and their responsibility. And I think that this is it. This is a good point, Pete, is that as instructors we are really good at taking away responsibility for them to be making those kind of decisions. So I think that's a really good point. And that, if you want to link it to all that kind of technical stuff and appropriate words, that is over instructing. So over instructing doesn't necessarily mean getting your level of instruction wrong. It can mean that, but it means taking away responsibility. And the downside of taking away responsibility, or taking responsibility from them, is deeper learning doesn't take place. And the deeper learning comes with instinct, it comes with that gut feeling, it comes with that personal stuff. So, and
I think it comes with that, as you were saying, with that relationship, that rapport. They feel that it doesn't matter if they muck it up. They may well have had other instructors before that would shout at them or take the mickey or whatever, and then they're too afraid to make a mistake, so they're too afraid to experiment. And if you get that relationship right in the car, experimenting is a good thing in a controlled environment, as we keep saying.
Helen, Helen, we've got this problem where we can only kind of see the first 4 lines of what you've said. So you've said teaching bay parking for the first time today, and we watched another learner get it wrong. My pupil was saying that the learner was steering the wrong way, and then I can't see what you've said, Helen, so apologies for that. But yeah, I think watching other people is really crucial, as you probably heard me say earlier. It's not just necessarily about what they've got wrong, so I think it's really useful to look at the positives as well. So okay, that pupil that you're watching may well have got her steering wrong, but what was that pupil doing well? Was actually their speed really good? Were they actually looking in the right places? So looking at the good as well as the things that you would
and possibly analysing why they got it wrong. So let's say they steered the wrong way, where were they looking at that point? Because if you look in the wrong place, you tend to steer the wrong way, particularly if you're new to a manoeuvre. So it's looking a bit deeper into it for solutions, isn't it? So what are those solutions to that person? And that way,
yeah, there you go, and she got it right first time. And I think that, as I said, just to reiterate, look at all the good stuff as well, because that's what you want them to be doing as well. You want them to adopt the good stuff and put right the stuff that somebody else wasn't. So yeah, great.
So you could consider making some or filming some videos of manoeuvres. So you could get someone to film you doing it, for example, from outside the car. If you found this a useful tool and that works, and it does work, that you may not obviously have to make that happen all the time, unless you're just driving around a queue waiting for a learner, going and hoping they're going to mug it up. That to make some videos of that can be a good idea, can't it? Just to show people if you don't have that availability in front of you, because people do learn that way.
I think we won't necessarily go on about manoeuvres. I know that
It's
Pete's
another
coming in with some tips and
subject,
things,
isn't
but yeah, it is another subject. But Helen, for your pupil who's got it right first time, no problem at all, go and get her wrong, because she's never gone wrong. So
Yeah.
She's watched other
She's
people
a
go
little-
wrong. So she's a classic person who's going to get it right again and again and again, and then on test it goes wrong, and she has no idea how to fix it. So go and get her deliberately wrong, so she practices doing wrong
And
right.
it's even them knowing they can fix it on tests, because there's a lot of these stories go around colleges, schools, peer pressure, peer groups, etc. So you've got to get it first time, you can't put it right. And that's borne by us driving instructors. Some driving instructors say it to their pupils. So it's them just knowing that putting wrong right is absolutely fine. But as we said at the very beginning, practicing it is crucial, because if you don't practice it, it doesn't happen. I'm sure you can all think of one or two stories where you've been sat in the back and go, oh my God, I only told them just before we set off, you get in the wrong lane at this roundabout, go left. I told them that. Yeah, but I can tell you how to fly a helicopter. It doesn't mean I would jump in one and have a go at it. You know, it doesn't. Humans don't work like that. So go and practice it. And it's quite a good fun lesson as well. But obviously, make them aware of what's happening, because it can be scary.
That will do.
I think so. Yeah.
Thank you very much to Marmalade Network yet again for supporting us, that allows us to come on here and have these regular live chats. Unsure of Marmalade Network, go and have a little look at the link that Plain has put up. They're good guys. They offer an awful lot of resources and benefits to driving instructors, and you get to earn commission from your pupils as well. So go and have a little look at that. Next week's live chat, I believe, is Monday again, and we're looking at mock tests. So yeah,
I didn't know. Must look at those.
yeah. So come and join us for a little chat about mock test, and come and share your experiences of doing them and how you do them as well. So
Brilliant.
bye bye.
Bye bye.